right, everybody, we're back with a brand new Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday here in the Cabral Concept. I wanted to share with you, I think, a pretty pertinent topic given that we are rolling right into summer, and that is summer weight loss solutions. And here's the thing. I know that you're going to be marketed to a lot of one size fits all and simply diet more, exercise more, all of the mores. What I want to share with you here today is that we've found that over the last 25 years or so and well over 250,000 clients, that it's usually not a one-size-fits-all approach that works. We know that, right? Or every diet plan would work for individuals. But what it is, it's honing in on your trigger for weight gain. And then obviously then, if you know that one trigger and you know what causes weight gain, if we remove that, like the thorn, the proverbial thorn in the elephant's foot, then what do? Well, we then gently ease back into natural weight loss. Why does that matter? Well, if we are losing weight naturally, it's going to be easier to keep off, and we're not going to struggle through the process. So here's what I want to share with you here today. There's 5 main reasons, 5 main triggers for weight gain. We're going to find out what yours is, and then we're going to help you work backwards and lose that weight. All right, so let's dive right into it. The first one is this. It's elevated levels of blood sugar. Now, this one you probably already heard about. I wanted to start with it because it is the case for many individuals that if you have elevated blood sugar, it's just so much harder to tap into body fat, oxidize body fat, and allow your body to use a different fuel source than glucose, right? So what do we need to do? Just not eat any carbs? Sure, that'll work initially, but what do we do in the long term? Well, that's not gonna work, right? What do we need to do? Improve that cell membrane health. What does that even mean? It just means that you have 30 plus trillion cells in your body. They all have basically doors on the outside. They let certain things in and certain things out. And one of the things that they won't allow in, if the cell membrane, if that door is locked, is glucose. So the glucose stays in the bloodstream. And what do? You have an endless amount of fuel for your body. It's going to be much more difficult to tap into body fat when you always have elevated blood sugar. And here's the other issue. Elevated blood sugar leads to then chronic stress in the body. The body's working, the pancreas is working really hard to produce more insulin. And you have an imbalance of leptin and ghrelin, so you're not necessarily feeling hungry at the appropriate times or full at the appropriate times, and you're not tapping into body fat, especially overnight, right? So it's an imbalance between cortisol and your hormones like estrogen. It creates inflammation. It's a disaster for the body. So we absolutely want to tap into intermittent fasting. That's a great thing to do, but it can also be overdone. Most people, they don't need to fast through breakfast. They do really well with a 6 at night to 8 in the morning fast. We've been doing this for many, many years. It seems to be the sweet spot for most people. Stop eating at 6, have breakfast at 8, or if you need to push it a little bit, go to 8, you can go to 10 a.m. in the morning. But most people do well with 3 meals a day, breakfast at 8 to 10, somewhere around that range, and then about 3-4 hours later, lunch, and then about 4 hours or so later, dinner. Now, why does that work for most people? Because if you go too long, people end up overeating. A lot of people do. We see this in our practice, but also it really messes with your hormones. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So we've got intermittent fasting, and also we want a diet that's built on a strong amount of protein. It doesn't need to be a pound. It doesn't need to be literally a gram per pound of body weight, but you want to have enough protein in each meal to satiate you and enough fiber. And I've got a lot of podcasts on this, and I'm going to link them up today at stephencabral.com/3421. Let's make sure that's what today's show is. Episode 3421. That's correct. All right. The second trigger for weight gain, and obviously then subsequent difficulty with losing weight, is low thyroid. So we can have high glucose, but we can also have low thyroid. 2 totally different things. They really are. A low functioning thyroid is like you're trying to heat a room and all you have is a fireplace and you've got a half a log to throw in that fire. That's it. Well, what type of heat, AKA metabolism, do you think a half a log is going to work? Not much. You're not going to heat the room with that. You need to put 2-3 logs on the fire, especially when that room is cold, right? Or more if you need to create more heat, AKA metabolic rate, to turn up the furnace, right, on weight loss. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that you have a good functioning thyroid. Your thyroid is very predictable. People say, I haven't been able to heal my thyroid. Literally, there are only so many ways that your thyroid can malfunction, and it's less than a dozen. It really is. It needs specific nutrients like iodine and selenium and B6 and zinc and vitamin A and iron, right? Now, do you want to take all of those things if you don't need them? No, not at high dosages, that's for sure, right? But you do need those nutrients to literally give the raw material to create thyroid hormone, right? The other part is that you need to, and we'll be talking about this in just a moment, you need to turn down and dampen the cortisol in your body. Because if cortisol is high, thyroid goes low. That's one of the reasons why keto and low carb diets backfire on many individuals, especially women 30 years old to 50 years old. And because it greatly disrupts hormones, and one of those is thyroid. And there's an easy way to test. So literally, you can run it right at home, no needles, no blood draws. That is the hormones. It's called the stress mood and metabolism test. And it looks at your glucose. It looks at your thyroid. It looks at all the things that we're talking about here today. That's optional, of course, for you to run, but it will tell you which one of these might be off. And so it takes all the guesswork out of it. All right. Number 3 is this. It's called estrogen dominance. Estrogen dominance is not necessarily even high estrogen, but it feels like high estrogen because progesterone levels are low. And progesterone levels, the number one reason for progesterone levels to drop, number one reason is elevated levels of cortisol and stress. All right, but what does estrogen dominance feel like? Well, it feels like water retention, bloating, irritability, sometimes weight gain, oily skin, adult-based acne, and disturbed sleep. And so many women can get this maybe just the last week of their cycle during the luteal phase, but some women experience this all month long. And this is an important one to look at, because if your body looks like it's holding on to water, it very likely could be the low thyroid and or estrogen dominance. Important one to look at. Number 4 is gut imbalances. This is greatly overlooked because it has nothing to do with hormones, right? You can even consider insulin a hormone. Glucose isn't specifically, but insulin is, thyroid hormone, estrogen dominance hormone. We'll talk about cortisol next, hormone, right? And so gut imbalances are not, though. But here's the issue with gut imbalances. If you have poor nutrient absorption, you're always going to be hungry. If you have irrational cravings and you never feel full, okay, it could be a GLP-1 based issue. And again, you produce that naturally in your gut. You don't need to take pharmaceuticals for that. If you're feeling bloated, right? If you're holding a lot of water, all of that can be from inflammation from gut-based issues. So extremely important to look at that. That's a different lab. That's called the Candida Metabolic and Vitamins Test. All these labs can be found at stephencabral.com/labs or stephencabral.com/shop. That'll send you over to EcoLife. And then all of those come with a personal consultation to review your results, and they come with a personalized wellness plan. As I always say, you don't need to work with the EcoLife team. You could work with a integrative health practitioner or your local naturopathic doctor, whatever works for you. I just want to make sure you find the results that you're looking for this year. And the last one on the list is cortisol and sleep. Why does this matter? Sleep imbalances, estrogen levels, thyroid levels, and glucose levels. And what imbalances sleep? Cortisol, right? So if your cortisol levels are elevated, especially in the evening, it can keep the mind going and give you that second wind, and it can make it very difficult to produce melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. It does so much more, but we'll just focus on sleep for right now. So the goal is, how can we have normal, healthy levels of cortisol in the morning hours, especially between 6 and 8 a.m. to wake us up naturally, right, without stimulants. But then also, how do we get it to fall in the evening? That is the goal. That's the goal of using something like the 3-2-1 sleep formula. 3 hours before bed, no more food. 2 hours before bed, limit the liquids. 1 hour before bed, no more blue light. It's a simple formula and it works. Now, there's more things that you can do. We have a sleep help formula, supplement formula that really works. You can start using things like full spectrum magnesium. You can do Adrenal Soothe, which lowers cortisol levels. You can do journaling. You can take a warm Epsom salt bath. There's so much that you can do, right? But what we need to do is just start with one. What is the one that's holding you back? And then begin to work that process. Because remember, if you find your trigger, it works like a domino effect, right? If you fix cortisol, and cortisol was the issue, all of a sudden you press on that one domino and then they all fall down after that. That is what we've seen time and time again. If you want to test your glucose levels, your hemoglobin A1C, your thyroid, your estrogen levels to progesterone, your testosterone, your DHEA, your cortisol, and so much more, one lab does it all. It's called the Stress, Mood, and Metabolism Test. You can run it at stephencabral.com/labs/shop or directly at /hormones-test, whatever works for you. And if you say, you know what, I don't want to do any lab testing, I just want to get to work. Well, something that helps with all of these except for the gut. So it helps with the glucose, it helps with the thyroid, it helps with estrogen dominance, it helps with cortisol and sleep. It's called the MetaVolve system. It used to be called Fatlocity. There was a name change a year ago. We thought it was more appropriate. I do really like it because it's all about the metabolism, right? So evolving the metabolism, MetaVolve, and you can find that by simply going on over to stephencabral.com/shop. Check out the MetaVolve formula. It's an AM and PM formula. It's guaranteed to work for you, so you have no risk, no worries. But it also comes with a full system. So it teaches you how to lose weight. It gives you everything that you need through a Fatlocity-based system course, and you can use that. You can use that then for the rest of your life as well. So obviously this is one podcast, but I've got so much more. If you're interested in thyroid hormones or female hormones, you can go to stephencabral.com/courses. I've got, deep dive courses on those, whatever works for you, but also just let us know how we can help. You can ask questions every day at cabralsupportgroup.com. Any question you have, let us know. We're happy to help. And again, today's show notes will be at stephencabral.com/3421. Take care, everybody. Have an amazing rest of the week. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.